I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies.
Welcome to Cookies, the world's most influential basketball podcast. I am Ben Detrick. Jordan Redaelli is on vacation. And Andrew Kuo takes 0 days off. Andrew Kuo, how are you doing, buddy?
Pretty amazing. I had
Really?
incredible. I had a really nice morning revisiting all of Jerry Stiller's most amazing moments on Seinfeld, and I was giggling at my computer because that man was a treasure.
You want a piece of me? That scene is so great from Seinfeld with him offering to fight Elaine, and the outtake reel is really special.
It's amazing. Also, a famous outtake, La Boca Vista, where he can't get that out of his mouth. My favorite Jerry Stiller moment was definitely stopping short. It's like, that's my move. Stopping short. I thought that comedic delivery was the best. And rest in peace, because he passed away maybe last night or something.
Yeah, a bunch of deaths, and of notable folks. Andre Harrell. Is it Harrell or Harrell?
I say Harold, but Harrell is cool too. Mr. Reggie Bullock
either way.
over here.
Yeah.
Yep.
Either way, legendary hip hop executive, R&B executive, Uptown Records. Kind of gave Puff his foot in the door. And then, of course, Little Richard. Legends all.
Yeah, man. I spent a second revisiting Little Richard. I mean, my personal history book starts at for music starts at drum and bass. So Little Richard to me wasn't a part of my encyclopedia, but I went back and listened to some of his jams, and that dude was an originator.
Are you saying music starts in 1996?
I'm saying music starts with LTJ Bukem. Yes. Yeah, these great people, man, and it's cool revisiting their lives. And, Jerry Stiller had a huge career even before Seinfeld, obviously. But Seinfeld is what I remember from him. And he was one of those people who stepped on the screen. Let's be honest, everybody on Seinfeld who steps on the screen, you immediately start smiling. Every single character. Yeah, man, he lived an awesome, productive, amazing life. So shout out to that guy.
And a long life.
Yeah, it's cool.
And I did not remember until I saw the clip of Little Richard being in a Michael Jordan, Spike Lee, Morris Blackman Nike commercial.
Oh, that's right.
I had totally spaced on that. And, after seeing him pass away and just kind of going through his, archive of material, it was pretty funny to see him aside MJ, who we're all talking about today, and then Spike Lee, and we had just seen clips of that 2 weeks ago in The Last Dance, and then Little Richard.
Yeah, it's as if you space on it and your memory got jammed up.
And we're out.
The perfect pod. But yeah, I mean, and I also saw Jerry Seinfeld stand up on Netflix, and it was nice to revisit all of my favorite jokes, and he repeated some of the same tropes that he did on Seinfeld, and I just love it, man. I love how Larry David's still productive. I love how Jerry Seinfeld's still making stuff. Elaine Bettis, I think, is my favorite comedic actor of all time, and Veep was incredible. This is like the family tree of all family. It's a Popovich family tree over here.
How is the Seinfeld special? Because I'll be honest here, as I tend to be on Cookies Hoops. Never liked the stand-up as part of the Seinfeld show architecture. I liked when they got rid of it, and they started with a cold opening on the street.
Yeah, and I'm sure, did we talk about this? But the guy who does the theme music during the stand-up bit plays it live to Jerry's cadence. So every time you hear it, he had played that live and recorded it for that specific intro, which I thought was pretty amazing.
Yeah, I saw that. It's great.
It's incredible. It's Yeah, and he's super emotive, and he's like Mozart over here. But the special was okay. I have found out later, post Seinfeld, that I really love Larry David quite a bit. And I really, really like Jerry Seinfeld too. But Jerry Seinfeld's energy as a stand-up is different than his character on the show. And this special in particular kind of was a little boomersational for me. It was a lot of like, cell phones are getting smarter, but we're getting dumber. I'm like, oh. That was one of the bits, you know. It's like the problem with men is like, and it was wonderful as like a time capsule and sort of like The Last Dance, and it's as if nothing had progressed since then, and we were
say
still
something about airline peanuts. Come on,
yeah.
Roast the peanuts.
He had a nice bit, no spoilers, that was like men's fashion is at their peak as soon as they get married, and then it's just downhill. Men don't look any better than they did when they got married, which I thought was kind of super funny.
Has that been true in your case? Or have you only gotten more pairs of buttery wallabies?
Dude, I look amazing now. I look so incredible.
Are you Apex?
I'm apexing. Like, an intern took a photo of me on the street, socially distancing responsibly, and I looked at it and I was like, I am amazing looking. I was wearing a sweatshirt. I sized up all my clothes. Shout out to Noah Johnson and our GQ friends. I sized 2 or 3 sizes up on my pants, and I was rocking those wallabies. The Wallaby King is back, baby.
Apex Kuo.
No, I look terrible. I look terrible. I look like a child, okay?
I disagree. I think it was Apex Kuo. Apex Kuo has the basketball shorts. That was the only thing
that's right.
missing, but you could imagine them.
I believe...
Like, it was snowing out. You can't be expected to wear Knicks shorts in the snow.
Listen, if they remade The Day After Tomorrow starring me instead of Jake Gyllenhaal and it was snowing in May, I would have been wearing wallabies.
Fair.
I was in character. But my style, I would say, was pretty suspect when I got married. So it's a very low bar. But I really aspire to like Chinese grandfather Tai Chi in the park at 5 a.m. style. So I'm going for it, man.
I also don't know what Jerry Seinfeld would consider today to be good style. Because when you watch Seinfeld, he is the least stylish of anyone by far.
Yeah, I don't want to be a pirate.
Well, no, I mean, Elaine looks great. She's wearing like Pendleton jackets. She looks amazing. She looks like every girl in Bushwick. She's crushing it.
George is an icon.
George, icon. Nick shorts.
Yeah. Kramer, not so much.
Big puffers.
Yeah.
Kramer, with obvious Redaelli swag aside, big Hawaiian shirts, etc.
Oh, true.
So, he's okay. Big suits.
True.
But Jerry's like a turtleneck and like
acid wash jeans.
So maybe Jerry is kind of killing it back then.
I like his sneaker choices. He wore a lot of good kind of orthopedic vibey shoes.
But he was a Nike dude.
So did he just wear Nikes?
I don't know of all the time, but I think he was pretty firmly like Nike. I don't know what he wore though. I can't remember.
Yeah, I mean it's odd because this special had they tried to frame it around him being a secret agent. So it opened with him in a chopper above the Hudson River, and he jumps out of it, and then he shows up on stage in like a suit, a nice suit, and then they play him out with Secret Agent Man. And I didn't really put that together with his routine, which was like, the problem with my wife is...
I'm thinking of the way that Jerry dressed during Seinfeld's heyday. If you put that on a 21-year-old in a dime square, I think they look cool.
Absolutely. Turtleneck, pleated acid wash, and like Bo Jackson's.
Yeah, I'd be like, this guy's dipped.
Yeah, his haircut just wasn't good. Like his haircut never came back, right?
I just don't know what Jerry thinks today would be good style.
Well, he's pretty clean cut. I don't know. Yeah, he looks like a what you think a very rich comedian would look like. Shout out to Jerry Seinfeld, though. Man.
Shout out to rich comedians in cars.
They created, American Express created the black card for him. He's number 1, right?
Sounds about right. I don't know if I believe it, but sure.
I think he talked about it on his getting a coffee with comedians. I forget what it's called exactly. But he was somebody, I think Mulvaney asked him, and he was like, oh, it's true. I was with the head of American Express, and I joked that there should be like a super duper card. It should be black, and he made the first one for me.
Okay, done.
Yeah.
It's like watching The Last Dance. If MJ said it, it must be true.
What's the deal with The Last Dance? I'm sorry.
So how are you handling quarantine fatigue?
Oh, so great. Just like my fit. Amazing. No, just like my fit. It's extremely challenging. I am probably having my personal kind of 2 hardest weeks. The exhaustion is real, and all I want to do is sleep, and I'm frustrated.
To me, the idea of quarantine fatigue, this is really when it started to set in. And we talked about it a few weeks ago or a few episodes ago where the weather was getting better, and we discussed everyone kind of being over it. You know, gave the coronavirus lifestyle. Give it a whirl. Give it a whirl. Not for me, man.
Yeah.
But people are now sick of it. And there's this balance between trying to find your new life, trying to live your life within these parameters, and saying, fuck it. You know what? I'm done with this. Because that's really dangerous. And despite the mistakes that places like New York have made or London has made, we're getting better in terms of the numbers.
New York is crushing it.
You're like, oh, look how it's not around like it was. It's still around, but it's not around like it was. Yeah. But if we go back to how we were, it's just going to come roaring back and rip through our city again. We all know this. So it's this balance of how do you create a livable life without endangering the rest of our city, without endangering our neighbors, without endangering the most vulnerable people in our society. And I think that's tough to sort out.
Yeah. And it's as dangerous as it was from day one, from the jump. Like, the thing is as effective, and now we're seeing it kind of, we know more about it, and it's not getting safer. It's like, oh, you can actually do more things. Like, you can do less things now. But the mental exhaustion is real. And I think it's frustration and boredom. And as soon as we get to the end of this month, it's going to bubble over again because we have to pay rent again. And we've talked about this a lot. Like, there is no incentive for us not to be grouchy or to feel despair. And every time we see these numbers pop up, like 300 people died yesterday, I'm like, those are people who loved Seinfeld, right? Mm-hmm. Like, those are people who have a lot to say about The Last Dance. They're dead. It's crazy. And the mental exhaustion of trying to save yourself, but also have some sort of feelings for your like fellow human is extremely challenging. And when you feel powerless like I do, when you've kind of given up all the money you can afford to give up, and when you have worked as much as you can work and they say you can't do any more, it's like, I understand that this is dangerous, and despair is real.
And there's a lot of facets to discuss on this topic, because the way that the disease, the virus, travels downhill, it may not see race and it may not see class, but it's like water.
It does.
It's going to roll. Yeah. It's going to go in a direction.
Yeah.
And, Adam, what do you say his last name? Serwer? He's a writer, I want to say, for The Atlantic. Great writer, and really addresses meaningful, smart topics exceptionally well. But he talked about how a lot of white people seem much more gung-ho about restarting the economy once it became clear that it was not largely white people who were dying from it.
Yeah.
And, those are legitimate topics to discuss.
Oh, we have to.
And on that same topic, all that snitching and all that scorning and all that shaming about people in parks. What was the actual result of that? Oh, it was the NYPD roughing up minorities in neighborhoods in the Bronx and Brooklyn and making arrests, which 85%, I think, or something, were people of color. That's what all your snitching did. That's what all those photos of parks going viral, all that screaming and crying about people not social distancing. Yeah, it got the attention of the government. And what do? They sent out the NYPD. And what do? They did what the NYPD does. And look, I'm not saying it is your fault because you put up a snitch photo that the NYPD did this, but there is a chain reaction. And now when you see a cop car sitting in a park with its sirens on, going in slow circles, social distance, hey, that sucks.
Yeah.
That sucks. This park was nicer when it was a little crowded and a little more awkward, where you had to kind of make sure you had some space. But you know what? Not cool having a car going around telling you to social distance. Kind of ruins the park.
Yeah, totally.
And that's what I'm saying is like this balance of how do you do the right thing and how do you live within a city and how do you make life the best it can be considering these circumstances that affect us all.
Yeah, I saw a thing on TV when I woke up, and it said the coronavirus is currently threatening three things the most. Our meat production industry, like Tyson had to shut down plants, and there's talk, the prison system, and the elderly. I'm like, oh, weird. Three of the things that we've fucked up for the last few decades. Like healthcare, race, and production.
Mass incarceration and medical care for the elderly. Really strong suits in America.
Yeah, and our means to production of food is related to poverty, and it's not like Tyson feeds our country, but like we don't. I mean, this is a whole nother topic, but like there's a problem there in itself. Like a meat should not be produced that way, in my opinion. So fuck it, we have to change it.
Our unethical production that is incredibly cruel to animals and humans alike.
Yeah. Like chicken should cost $20 because they have to be taken care of, And
a chicken doesn't deserve to live like that.
Yeah.
Not that chicken doesn't deserve that, man.
No.
Even if you're gonna kill a chicken and eat it, it doesn't deserve to live in misery.
No. Yeah, the way we talk about chicken and beef as just like a thing to choose between is just, we have to change that. These are like, I don't know, living organisms that like feed us and are great and are tasty, and we love food and restaurants, but like, come on. Obviously this is a big deal when the coronavirus hits because we've mismanaged it for too long.
Exactly. Water runs downhill.
Yeah, exactly. What do you think the city's going to look like though, man? Like, how do we do this?
I've been thinking about this a lot actually, is what kind of city do we want to live in and what kind of city can we live in versus our natural pessimism that this is going to be an acceleration of all the things we hate. So setting aside the negativity, what can we do better? How can we live our best life? How can we eat, love, and pray? Laugh, love, live under coronavirus. And there's certain things that have been proposed that I'm into. Let's shut down more streets.
Let's
nice. Do that. Let's make that happen. It keeps getting mentioned. Somehow doesn't happen. Let's do it. Shut down a ton of streets in New York. Go ahead. Let's put outdoor seating outside of restaurants. Weather's getting good. Do it. They do it in Italy. They do it in Spain. They do it all over the world. Cafe seating. Shut down streets. Put seats out there. Space them apart. Let people eat at restaurants outside. Open container. Dunzo. We're off that. Mm-hmm. Bars to go. Drink in the street. Drink in parks. We have to figure out a way to live a reasonable, enjoyable life under this thing. Mm-hmm. And because it's not going to be gone. We can't just say, all right, bars are open again. I don't know how valid it was or if it was true, but there was that story that, South Korea said, We're going to reopen. One guy with COVID went into a nightclub and they ended up with 40 cases as a result. That was reported. And then they had to do contact and trace on 1,900 people.
Yeah.
We're not going to have We're not going to have bars and restaurants open like they were. That's not happening until there's a vaccine. It's just not. Mm-hmm. So we have to figure out a way to meet people and see our friends and have relationships with other humans without endangering us as a group. We have to make our city better. We have to make the world better. And I don't know, I'd like to think of it in an optimistic way, that we can create long-lasting things that make us better while simultaneously making it better in the short term.
Yeah. And, I want to scream this from the hilltops, but our whole take has always been, this is actually an acceleration. So I wish for these things to happen, but I as a pessimist, I don't think a lot of them will. But I'm with you. Like, my thing starts with, like, we got to be better people. And what does that mean? That means if we reprioritize why people want to come to New York and hang out, it's not just a pastrami sandwich. It's somebody whose vision is to keep this pastrami sandwich alive. So we need to keep the small businesses going, because they offer the things that we crave and that are unique to this city. Anybody can come here and get Chipotle, or anyone can get Chipotle wherever they're from. And having more Chipotles doesn't really help this city. And we're not about that. We're about, like, small businesses with their own point of views, kind of chipping away at what this city is. And they shut down the subways between 1 and 5, and we know they said it was for cleaning, but one of the biggest things I've always thought is, I think we treat our homeless population with the wrong lens, through the wrong lens. Just moving them away from places that they're at isn't enough. Like, we have to address mental health. And I think the first thing our city should do after this is, like, figure out a way to care for these people who, one, don't want care, and two, are probably mentally ill, and just, like, shooing them out of the subway system is a classic New York City move. But I wish when we come out of this, we ask, not to be Last Dance relevant, but this is a Last Dance pod after all. I want them to ask why. Like, why are we doing this? Why are they there? Because
the subways always get cleaned.
Yeah, exactly.
The shutdown and the cleaning of the subway, that always happens.
Yeah.
This is about getting homeless people out of the subway cars, out of the subway stations, which I do understand in that essential workers have to take those methods of transportation. So you have to make them as safe as possible. The real thing is the existing problem that forces homeless people out of shelters, which are not safe, and having a mental care system that lets people just go, that just releases people into the wild with very little help to self-medicate, and a healthcare system that's broken. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So unless we can say, let's take them all and put them in empty hotel rooms, that's still a fix for the now, not a fix for the future.
Yeah, I don't love that idea, because that's assuming these people are healthy mentally and physically. And I think instead of doing that, we should try to help them in the long term. Be like, what has happened to you in your life? Like, what brought you here? And when I say the city, I hope the city is nicer. I'm not talking about, like, bad people becoming good people, whoever you think is bad or whoever you think is good. I'm just saying, like, 5% better, man. Just a little bit better.
Well, for something like the homeless in the subways, we're talking about mitigation. The same way as we deal with the virus. It's mitigation. We're not dealing with the root cause. We're not having preventative measures that prevent it from taking root. We're just dealing with it after it occurs.
Yes, right. And I think if you talk to someone who didn't have schizophrenia or wasn't bipolar and was like, I can't get a job because no one hired me, and I drink a bit and my life tumbled down and I thought I had it under control and now I'm here. And then you just just start looking at things being like, well, why can't a small business hire you? It's like, oh, because they have to pay your health insurance and it's too expensive. And these small businesses maybe can only handle 2 or 3 employees, as we're finding out with the PPP fiasco. And the whole structure and the whole taxation process is creating these problems. And I'm not saying you have to hold every homeless person's hand, although I think that would be nice. I think if we change legislation and policy, it could have a trickle effect, right? And it could help more people than the lawmakers think.
Well, one thing we're seeing is the limitation of private ownership in terms of how it responds and how it takes care of people. It doesn't.
Yeah.
And if we're going to argue for the government doing more things, as you are, and as we generally do, such as healthcare, et cetera, I think in this utopian idea where we use this as an accelerant in a better direction versus a worse direction.
Yeah.
This is the rosy, idealistic, utopian idea. What if you said, you know what? We're sick of predatory middleman. How about the city creates its own version of Seamless or Caviar or Grubhub? It's a city version. The only money you pay is to keep it operational. That way, all the money just goes to the restaurants and its workers, instead of any of it, 35% going to the portal. Just for the sake of argument. What if you said, in our new New York City, we don't allow Amazon. We didn't allow Walmart. No Amazon. Sorry. Order direct. Mm-hmm. You can't go through Amazon. We will not let them deliver here. No more TaskRabbit. No more, Airbnb. I'm just for the sake of argument.
Sure.
If you said, we're not allowing those things anymore. It's about small businesses. It's about New York City for New Yorkers. We get rid of Bostonian mayors. Look, I know I'm going over the top here. I'm just more suggesting that you could use a shock doctrine to introduce good things for the city that would protect small businesses and the things that we cherish, like drinking in the street and restaurants being open. And okay, we're going to have a semblance of the life we had, but we're going to prioritize the things that make us special. That's just my vision of a possibility that will not happen.
It's funny because you say drinking in the street, and my first reaction was like, LOL, party time. But no, the tickets and the population that law targets is not like rich white people. Like people who get busted for drinking in the streets aren't in the West Village.
No, not at all.
It's gross, and yeah.
Or if they are in the West Village, it's right around like West 4th.
Right. Yes. Near the IFC, near the cage, right? Mm-hmm. The cages. I want this city
over on like 7th Avenue, exactly. Right around there.
Yeah. I want this city to be a more of a bicycle city, like Asia. Like I want them to like you said, block off some streets like Seattle did. Seattle blocked it off for the Rona. They did a fantastic job, and they're keeping them closed.
Right. I'm saying yes, enduring changes. That's my real thing. I was saying a bunch of pie in the sky things that are my own agendas, like middlemen. But for
fair.
real, making actual changes that are meaningful going forward, like shutting down huge swaths of the city streets. Mm-hmm. Shutting them down. Just, nope, this is all pedestrian now. Oh my God, that makes traffic around New York worse.
Figure it out.
Who fucking cares?
Yeah, whatever.
Oh no, there's bad traffic. Okay, don't drive.
Yeah.
I'm very much in favor of shutting down huge amounts of streets. Again, outdoor dining, al fresco. Like, let's just make life better. Let's make life more interesting. Outdoor art. Like, most of it sucks, but let's make it a more habitable, kinder, gentler city about the things that we cherish and treasure. And you need someone who cares about those things, unlike de Blasio or Bloomberg in charge. If you had someone who was empathetic and artistic and cared about the soul of New York, unless it was someone from Beantown. I mean, literally.
Yeah.
The last 20 years, or whatever it is, 18 years, have been Beantown aesthetics.
I know Cynthia Nixon lost because she wasn't like a politician, but like I was kind of looking forward to that cool chaos, Being like, she cares about this stuff, right?
We need a mayor who actually does care about this stuff. Mm-hmm. Because it's important, and it's what's jeopardized more than anything else right now. Do I think de Blasio really cares about neighborhood restaurants? I don't know. Does he care about nightlife? No. Maybe more than Bloomberg. I don't know. I know I'm just sort of coming up with shit, but I'm saying in a perfect world we would use this to move in a different direction
Yeah.
as a counter or a I don't know what the word I'm looking for, a correction versus an acceleration towards a dystopian police state.
For sure. And I was a very, very young human when Koch was mayor, and I lived through Dinkins, and Koch loved the arts. His best friend was Cyndi Lauper. He presided over a New York that a lot of people consider the golden age, but it was dangerous, and there was a lot of drugs, and there was crime in New York City. You got movies like The Warriors and Curtis Lewa and the
your boy.
I think he's so. I remember seeing those guys in the subway when I was little, and my mom was like, I was so curious as what to. I was like, are they superheroes? Or are they a part of a club? And she's like, part of a club is more like it, and they.
Yeah, they're wannabe vigilantes.
Yeah.
He's talking about the Guardian Angels, the guys in little red hats.
And they had red bomber jackets, and they looked really cool. As a kid, I was like, those guys are cool. And my mom was like, they're almost police officers, so don't talk to them. My mom was really advanced. Even as a young kid, she was like, if you ever get lost in New York, don't ask a cop anything. Go into a store and ask the owner of the store, which was smart. I would give that advice to my kid.
Look, it's what you were saying a moment ago, and what we were talking about with law enforcement in New York. Yeah. If you advocate for more interaction between the cops and the citizenry, it will only manifest in one way.
Yeah, I know.
It's not going to be, they're rounding up the hipsters and scolding them. Nah, they'll be in Brownsville.
Yeah. And well, to get back to the point, as soon as we got maybe Giuliani and then absolutely Bloomberg, their vision of the city was like, oh, we want big business to come in. We want Amazon to invest in the city. And I'm not totally opposed to crime going down and money coming into the city to help us all, but it didn't quite work out that way, right? It created a larger gap, and there was an inequity issue, and there was certain laws that made it sweet for corporations to move in. And I appreciate the city being safer. In my lifetime, New York City has gotten much safer, and I feel very, very lucky and grateful for that. But not to be weird, but at what cost? And that cost is the price of culture a little bit.
Well, this idea that safety is everything is an authoritarian message.
Yeah.
Oh my God, safety. First of all, you've got to be safe. Not true.
Yeah.
I'm not arguing in favor of danger, but supreme safety is where mass surveillance comes in, or, draconian laws.
Sometimes, yeah, for sure.
I mean, I'm saying that's the ultimate end of safety is a police state.
Well, this is why, bringing up the Guardian Angels is interesting, right? Because, as we see on Twitter, which isn't quite governed, people think, Jack governs Twitter a bit, and he does, but we kind of govern Twitter ourselves and as peers, through pressure, and we dictate how we talk amongst ourselves. And sometimes it takes a long time to figure out where we land, and sometimes it doesn't. And safety can take many forms, right? I may feel safe in some places that someone else might not, and vice versa. And I agree, it's draconian, and it takes a form of something really, really terrifying, but it doesn't have to. And
Right. 100%. I'm more talking about our version of it.
Yeah.
Because there's another safety where you go to, say, Berlin, which is really, really safe. Other cities in Europe, Stockholm, whatever, extraordinarily safe. Mm-hmm. And part of it is because instead of mitigation via harsh punishment, they nip things at the bud. They have better systems in place for making sure people don't fall into situations where criminality naturally takes root.
We
don't do that here.
Yeah. Not for nothing, we have a big opioid problem. That is something that I'm constantly reminded of because all my friends are fucking dying. So, and a lot of, I feel problems in our society kind of stem from that, the lack of empathy for that crisis, I think. And I don't know. I just sound like a regular ass adult complaining about society.
Why not?
Yeah,
What else we got to do?
I know. But like do you know where I was going with this internet thing? Like, have you been following this Chrissy Teigen, Allison Roman thing?
Yeah, I watched it unfold after reading an article, and I forget the outlet, but Allison Roman, who is a food writer, cookbook author, contributes recipes to the New York Times, and her background is like Momofuku and Bon Appetit, like a food world person. And she's received a lot of attention during the pandemic, because her recipes are really are simple and they're good for making at home. You can raid your pantry and come up with a delicious white bean stew with some harissa, and you're good to go.
Famous for a shallot pasta, I believe.
So she was interviewed and kind of talked greasy about Chrissy Teigen and your girl, Kondo.
My girl, yo, easy. Okay, go on. You're on watch, though.
So to that point, right, the targets that she chose were of her own selection, and they were two non-white women. So it was about who she targeted less than what she actually said. And it was also some tone policing. She used the word bitch. She said fucking sellout. So it became a internet scandal where she was partially canceled, a little bit canceled, maybe not canceled at all. Who's the victor here? What happened, Kuo?
I mean, when that stuff dropped, it was so hard for me to actually care about this because it felt like, you're right, it felt like a tone thing and people weren't appreciative of her tone, and Twitter knows how to do this, right? The mechanism immediately triggers and it chugs along like a factory, being like, well, these two people that were singled out are people of color, which is hilarious because Marie Kondo's just Japanese, right? Like, she's a citizen of Japan who is a celebrity, and yes, she's not white, but it's interesting our point of view there. She's Japanese, and also, I guess, a person of color. So I don't want to be the person
we
of color.
can say she's non-white. We can say she's a person of color.
Yeah.
So, but again, Allison Roman picked those targets, so it is fair game for people to say, why them? And it could be a coincidence, or it could be deep-seated discomfort with non-white women in the culinary and houseware space. Yeah. I don't know.
I mean, and when I say the Twitter mechanism clicked in, it's like Allison Roman is a young white person, and there's this whole Karen thing that Twitter really loves, which is like white women who are threatened by people of color. And I'd like to go on the record, I love white people, present company included. You
go
know,
off,
like
King.
I'm a person of color who really, really loves white people.
Oh,
so
they're great.
I never really got with the Karen thing because I don't know. It wasn't really a part of my brain until someone presented it. And it's a funny joke at times, you know, and I thought this thing was something that took up my brain like dust masks during a coronavirus that I did not have to think about anymore if I wanted to be happy. And I like Chrissy Teigen and Allison Roman and Marie Kondo so much. The three of them are awesome. I've never put them together in the same thought, but here we are. And a couple days later, somebody came after some of Chrissy Teigen's maybe like not so successful jokes on Twitter, and she, with 13 million followers, went private. And I'm like, we're killing ourselves, man. We should be kinder to each other globally and in Twitter, and we don't have to do it like this.
While I can understand the perspective of people who said, hey, it's a white woman going after non-white women. Get that. Or I don't like her tone. She's rude. She seems mean. Okay, cool. Whatever. Do your thing. I don't understand the Chrissy Teigen standing. Because what she actually said about Chrissy Teigen was that Chrissy Teigen puts her name on a bunch of housewares, kitchenwares that's sold at Target, and she doesn't want to do that. Like that was the statement. Now the tone, right? Like the tone might have been objectionable. It might have been flippant. It might have been dismissive. Yeah. And she did make the mistake of implying that Chrissy Teigen like wasn't involved. That was an error.
Right.
Because that's totally subjective. Who's to say how much Chrissy Teigen cares about her Target brand? You know, Chrissy Teigen might care deeply about the Cravings by Chrissy Teigen $7 spoon available at Target. She might care about nothing more on the planet than the Cravings by Chrissy Teigen aluminum baking tray available at Target. Yeah. But what Alison Roman said was 100% accurate. Chrissy Teigen does have an empire of garbage that she is selling off of her name. Cravings by Chrissy Teigen. It doesn't say Cravings. It says Cravings by Chrissy Teigen on every single product she sells. It is mid-level, quasi-affordable, generic kitchenware. Are we riding for that? Like, are we, nah, I am team spatula. Do not disrespect the Cravings by Chrissy Teigen $7 spatula available at Target. Do not cross me. Like, that's the side?
There's a tradition of this, right? Like, and I immediately think of Isaac Mizrahi, who was like the fashion designer for a long time. And this guy, talk about originators, he's on that level. But then he retired from making his own line and went to infomercials. And I think that was a really confusing thing for a lot of his fans to see. And they had the same reaction, being like, he's a sellout. And this was a different era where selling out was actually something we cared about. Now I think it's not part of our thought process as much because we're all trying to sell out. But I think it reminds me of a traditional gripe. This story is as old as time, right? Like, I don't believe you wanted enough. It's like, well, how would you know how much I want it? It's like, because you make this thing, you lost this game. Therefore, I want it more than you in a more ethical way. And I'm like, oh, yeah, this probably goes back to like the Venus of Willendorf and cave paintings, right? It's like, yo, that Venus of Willendorf guy sold out. He made one good thing, but then he made like 20 more villain die. I don't know.
Right, and then they can be like, how dare you? You know, I put so much work into deciding that the $7 Cravings by Chrissy Teigen spoon would be in pistachio and not cherry. That was me. I made that decision. How dare you? I looked at the price point after it was mass-produced in China, and I helped pick it. Yeah. I looked at the photos that were going to be, and the fonts. That was me.
I called them and said, I want an affordable spatula available for $7.
They gave me 7 options. I picked one. I did that. That was me. I sat at my table in my house and did that, and you can't take that away from me. And it's true. You can't take it away from her. Look, I don't care. Chrissy Teigen can sell whatever she wants. I do not. There's nothing I could care less about. I'm only saying that the objectionable statement was that I don't want to do that. That's a totally reasonable statement. I don't want to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, and, I believe, shots were fired, but, we live for this. We're sports fans, We have Skip Bayless in our lives. We have Stephen A. Smith. This is a part of our culture, and...
I thought we were here for petty. I thought we wanted was people talking slick. I thought it was all about roasting and slaying. Yeah. What happened to that?
And I think Chrissy Teigen has every right to be upset and be like, "Yo, she fired shots at me. I was a fan. What the hell?" But then the ganging up on whoever and the swiveling of who to gang up on is just like, I opted out of it. I'm just like, we're not to be that guy, but things are real heavy out there, and we can joke about. No jokes are coming out of this, so
counterpoint. This is what we got, man. This is all we got. Cancellations and counter cancellations. Let's go. This is our new entertainment. We don't have movies. We don't have sports. All we got is cancel and counter cancel.
Well, if there was a secret society, like the Skulls or G.I. Joe shit or Avengers, they'd be like, yes, these people are fighting amongst themselves while we create legislation that is bullshit.
Fine.
Yeah, but no one wants to follow legislation because that shit is depressing and complicated. And
can't we do both? Don't we have the bandwidth because we're in our houses in front of our computers for 15 hours a day to follow kitchenware
beef? Yeah. Or failed joke beef, like, I mean, we grew up with kind of good jokes and scary jokes and whatever.
Dude, take that beef, let it simmer for 4 to 6 hours in a Cravings by Chrissy Teigen crock pot. Available at Target.
Man, I think all these people are great, man. And Marie Kondo, I just imagine her with the Mariah Carey meme. Like, I don't know who she is, It's like, I'm in Japan doing my thing. And, She
might have made fun of an Asian accent, too.
Did she?
No, I'm saying she might have with like, please to sell you to something.
Whatever. That's fair.
No, I'm like, if she didn't do the fake Asian voice,
right.
Is it actually offensive? Because Kondo doesn't really speak English.
No, she's Japanese.
That's what I'm saying. If someone made fun of my Spanish, I'd be like, well, duh. I can't speak Spanish.
Yeah. And
here comes Ben. Yo soy. I'm like, that's legit. Yeah, roast me.
Yeah.
But I also get why it has a history of insensitivity, obviously. But
dude,
still,
if someone rolled up and was like, Michael Jordan's the greatest player of all time, I'd be like, LOL, you don't know basketball.
But that's what I'm saying. We're here celebrating MJ, calling Isaiah an asshole. I thought this is what we wanted. We were here for this.
It's confusing when it's okay and not. And, we decided as a community to do it. And and maybe we're not sure sometimes. You know?
Live, laugh, love. Come on. The laugh is part of it, right?
It's funny. Like, I always think if you ask any random stranger on the street, just pull them aside and be like, do you think you're doing this coronavirus thing right? They would say yes. And if you ask them, are you an empathetic person? I don't like that word, but it's the quickest end to that mean. Do you have empathy? They'd probably be like, more than anyone I know. And if I guarantee you everyone would say that. And here we are, just the worst. Just like being like, I am amazing. Therefore, I can tell you that you're not. And I'm like, well,
have you ever met anyone who called themselves an empath that was empathetic?
Right. And the more Michael Jordan tells us he's the best, I'm like, yo, Gary Payton was pretty good, man.
I don't have to think about whether I'm being empathetic. I would just sense it. I can just sense what you're going through. I don't have to actually ask you or contemplate it or consider it. I can just sense it. And I think you're fine. You're doing great.
How many people in your life do you know that think they're an empath?
I've known a few.
I have at least 3. It's weird. I want to believe them, but they're not 6 for 6 in the finals. I'm like, yeah, I'm into this. Oh, you got Horace granted.
No, it's like when you meet someone and they're like, oh yeah, I love basketball. Play it all the time. You're like, there's a lot of different levels to this, man. Like, are you?
I'm a baller.
Like, are you lightweight overseas? Like, are you like you could play in Israel? Or are you could throw a basketball at a rim? Like, it could really go. There's a lot of tiers.
Both kinds of tiers. And I think if pressed, 80% of people would say they're empaths. But like, okay, fine, I got it. I know what's up. I can tell something.
It's the claim. Like, can you ball in the Adriatic League or not? That's what I'm talking about. Can you do that? No. I played in 6th grade. Yeah. I own a mini ball from Pizza Hut. It's Charlotte Hornets.
One of my friends for years claimed that she or they were emotional geniuses because they had set up their friend with another friend and it worked and they're still together and it was an amazing match. And she was like, you don't understand. I see things that no one else can see, but the world doesn't recognize this. And 3 years later, she got a friendly divorce, and I had to keep my damn mouth shut, man. I'm just like, swallow that because nothing good's going to come out of this, and you are I am a jerk,
Man, I wish you could learn to keep your mouth shut on Cookies Hoops, the world's most influential basketball podcast. What a day that would be.
But maybe what I'm saying is I don't have that gift, and I'm not even trying to do that thing, but I'm not trying to be like, "Oh, I'm so bad at that." I don't read people that great.
You don't read at all.
Oh, what? Fuck that. I saw The Goldfinch. I was like, this movie should be a book. It was pretty good.
You know who is also not an empath? Michael fucking Jordan. So there's this documentary. It's called The Last Dance. It's been going on for a month.
Right.
We are now 8 hours into the Michael Jordan story, as told by Michael Jordan and Michael Jordan's viewpoint, his perspective, edited and more or less directed by Michael Jordan. One man's tale.
Yeah.
Last night on Sunday, we were confronted by episodes 7 and 8 in the 10-part saga about Michael Jordan.
Positionless basketball documentary making.
So last night, the first episode dealt with Michael Jordan leaving the NBA to pursue a baseball career following the death of his father.
Excuse me. The episode was about one of his arch rivals, Keith Van Horn. It started with Van Horn just threatening his throne on the New Jersey Nets.
Taking his throne.
Officially.
So we had Jordan's dad's death. Yeah. We had him leaving basketball. Then we had him returning, and of course, capped off with some winning.
Even more winning?
He wanted it. More after quitting. So I don't know where to start because there are a few different topics here. What did you take away from the episode about his father? Because Michael Jordan's father's death had long been rumored, cruelly, if it is untrue, of course, that it had something to do with Michael Jordan's gambling. And his father was found murdered in a car by the road in North Carolina. Or we found out he was in a river. He was in a river. River, yes, that's right. That's right. And then, 2 young men were arrested for this crime. They were flashing jewelry, etc. So it took pains, right, to say that it was not because of Michael Jordan's gambling?
I mean, this is one of the things we were waiting for. I think the questions we have in Jordan's life that we don't have answered as fans is his comment about Republicans buying shoes too, which he briefly addressed, and the situation with his father, which is not only vague but terrifying. So I was waiting to, when I first heard about this, I was like, I want him to speak about his father because that still captures our imagination a little bit. It's a truly horrifying situation that happened, and we didn't get much. We got a brief glimpse into his relationship with his father. And I didn't quite know this, but his father was omnipresent in the locker room and in games, and would bring kids into the locker room after every game to meet Jordan. And he was his confidant and his best friend, in his own words, one of his best friends in his life. And he was a young man. This was in his 20s. And his father was murdered when he was 29. And this is a really powerful part of his life, and we didn't get much. We got the breakdown of the situation, and then we had some quick sound bites from people saying, how dare you insinuate that it was because of something Michael Jordan had done in his private life. And then briefly, I forget who it was, but someone, maybe it was Hannah Storm, who said, but if you connect the dots, there was a really compelling story there with gambling and timing and the way he left the game. And David Stern was like, no, I did not suspend him. And David Aldridge was like, why would you suspend him? He's a moneymaker. I'm like, ooh, this thing is even more complicated than I thought. And then it ended. And then we got LaBradford Smith.
Yes, this follows what we've seen from this documentary overall, and that it sort of went from, wow, this is unapologetic propaganda for Michael Jordan's greatness and his legacy, to being so one-dimensional that we are filling out the rest of him in an unflattering way, mostly, to now it's really interesting to see how it's edited. And by edit, I mean by him, not by the actual editor, but by him.
He is the editor,
yes,
for sure.
Right. So what's left in and what's left out? And when does he exclude Horace Grant's heroics at the end of the Phoenix Suns game?
Big block Horace.
You know, well, why does he leave that out? Because what's now fascinating to me is that if you had a friend who was going through a breakup and you say, what happened? And they would tell their account of how things went awry. And depending on the person, they could take none of the blame or they would take all of the blame. And you would only have their version, in this example, to analyze. And you'd say, yeah, but he always blames other people. Oh, yeah, but he always is so hard on himself. Depends, right? So with MJ, we have the advantage of knowing the real story. We know what really happened in these games and these series. We know the stats. When he sits there scoffing at the idea that Gary Payton could guard him, well, we know he went 22 of 60 in the 3 games that Gary Payton guarded him. And he's like, nah, I had no problems with the glove. Yes, you did.
Problems. Yeah.
Yes, you did.
Yeah.
You shot 36%, 37% against him. They almost won that series, and they might have won that series if Gary Payton had guarded you earlier, because George Karl, like Larry Brown, was not a dullard from the Dean Smith doofus tree.
Oh, that was amazing. Yo, a dullard from the Dean Smith doofus tree?
It's very close to Jerk Store.
Shout out to the comedic geniuses in New York City, Ben Detrick, Larry David.
Man, I was just riffing. I did not come up with that beforehand.
Oh my God.
I would not have written that. Dullard from the doofus tree?
Yo, man.
What was that?
Did you just black out and spit bars, man?
Like, it's not even funny or clever. It's just weird. I'm not impressed by myself. I'm just wondering why I came up with a dullard from the doofus tree.
I was like, murder, faulty memory, and the dullard from the doofus tree.
I don't even use either of those 2 words.
Cookies.
The perfect pod. Well, anyway, all that to say, I am now engrossed by this series because it is a vision of a man who can't tell the truth, a man who cannot confront things about the past and is still so preoccupied by his own legacy, his own reputation, that the stuff he leaves in, man. Okay, we're going to dedicate 5 minutes to LaBradford Smith.
Practice Steve Kerr.
It's wild. What is this documentary telling us about MJ that is actually new versus the useless footage from 25 years ago that is like literally like trash?
It's telling us that one of the biggest hurdles in his career is practice Steve Kerr. It's B.J. Armstrong on the Charlotte Hornets. Yeah, I mean, this documentary is fantastic. And we saw, our last pod, we talked about, this is rounding out to be super fascinating, but not in the way that we thought. And we knew Jordan was leaned this way about history and about his legacy. And we knew it was going to be a sizzle reel for 10 hours. But it made me really like Jordan after last night because, and I say this in gentle terms, like, he hasn't quite grown up yet, right? Like, he is the man that was the player. So we're seeing him 20 years removed from the spotlight of him on the Bulls the second time. And he has not changed. And I find that to be really endearing and very melancholy. And I think about his father quite a bit because his father died when Jordan was a young man. And it seems like something happened where he's still upset at Gary Payton, at LaBradford Smith, at B.J. Armstrong, at Steve Kerr. And I don't know many adults who hold grudges this way. And I know the competitive nature of his personality is what drives him, and that's what he tells us this is. But I may be reaching, but I think this documentary has turned into a lost young man. Does that make sense?
Yeah, he's kind of Al Bundy here. Despite the fact that he was the
You're
greatest
crushing it.
basketball of all,
You're crushing it today.
basketball player of all time, he's Al Bundy. He's sitting on his couch in someone else's house, getting wasted off Sincoro, taking down his enemies.
Yeah.
My glory. There's no perspective. There's no graciousness.
Yeah.
But why not build up your opponents that you then conquer? Gary Payton said, no problem with Gary Payton. Why not say, Gary Payton is one of the most ferocious on-ball defenders I've ever faced. That guy is a tremendous competitor. Gets in your face, lets you hear about it. You know, there are guys I like going against. There are guys that I like going against because I don't like them. Because I know it's going to be tough and it's going to be intense. Payton's that kind of guy. Why?
Yes.
You just laughed at him? It's Gary Payton, man. He's a baller. He's a Hall of Fame player. He's great. You don't have to say he sucks.
Yeah. It's weird, and that's what a young man would do, right? It's like the only obstacle is me, and nothing gets in my way. And I'm like, well, that's clearly not the case. Like, time gets in your way. Other people get in your way. Sean Kemp is on that team. Sean Kemp balled out in that series, and it's a great achievement that Jordan beat them. And, that helps the whole story.
If he says, well, look, Gary Payton was on 9 defensive first teams in a row. 9. He won Defensive Player of the Year in 1996.
Yeah.
First guard to win it in 8 years. That guy was a problem. He was tenacious. You know what?
He was.
But I gave him that work.
Yeah.
He made it tough. He made that ring tough. Instead, now it's super easy to win that. Yeah. Peyton didn't do anything. Let's not mention the stats. Let's just say I won and Peyton's trash.
And like we were talking
so
about,
weird.
And we were talking about housewares, and it's like we love trash talkers, right? But at a certain point, you're just like, oh, I'm opting out of this. I want a different story, because we can talk trash all day long, being like, you don't got it. He's Gary Payton didn't give me problems, and I think his main targets in this documentary to me are Isaiah Thomas, Scottie Pippen, and the man who remains unseen, who is LeBron James. And
also Jerry Krause beyond the grave just wants to pee on Jerry Krause's 5'2" grave.
Easy with the short jokes, first of all.
I'm on your side.
Oh, it sounds like you're on my side.
Short king, I'm with you.
Did you know that the working title for this entire documentary was actually "Fuck Jerry"? But I read some of LeBron James's Twitter live tweets during this, and LeBron James is also throwing a little shade, but he was like, amazing, Jordan's incredible, look at this, the GOAT. And I'm like, oh, you're already winning this battle, Even Isaiah Thomas is like, I don't know why we're talking about me. Jordan is incredible. He beat me, but I also beat him. Whatever. Why are we talking about me? He's like, my feelings are hurt. I'm like, Isaiah Thomas is a more advanced, mature man than Jordan, which is, I don't know, whatever. One person has to be more mature, I guess.
To me, the unreleased footage is totally unremarkable. There was apparently 500 hours of this. It doesn't seem to be worth a damn.
No.
It's whatever. The tale that's being told is not worth a damn. It's exactly what we've heard the entire way, and has been repeated and regurgitated by the exact same people the whole way. It is just the story of Michael Jordan as you have always known it, repeated again today. What isn't the same old story is seeing him now as this bitter guy. We've known about it, but we haven't seen it this direct.
He's so fragile.
You'll see a quote somewhere in a story, oh, MJ's being salty again. But him there, scornfully laughing at Gary Payton with his refilled drink of whiskey or tequila in a sterile living room with palm trees outside.
That's not his own.
Right. Just an unloved man who accomplished everything and is just deeply unhappy and still still even today has to figure out how to win, like the ultimate winning, chasing a victory that doesn't even exist. Now he can't even do it on the court. He has to do it by yelling at Isaiah Thomas and Horace Grant 25 years later. It's Wrath of Aguirre, man. Yeah. It's him on the raft with a bunch of critters around him, like screaming that he's going to be victorious.
And I'm not claiming I am mature at all. Like, I still wear sweatshirts every day. And
still wear Knicks shorts.
Yes, proudly. So I am not on my high horse here. I am speaking as like a super fan of the NBA. And like, there are people in our world who are very powerful and very successful, possibly even the most powerful person on earth, who are not quite mature, but they are extremely successful in what they do. And Michael Jordan, when I say he's fragile, what I mean is the thing that made him so compelling as an athlete, which was this drive, which is this direct straight line into his opponent's soul to beat him. In his old age, these opponents have grown up, maybe through defeat even, but Michael Jordan, through victory, has not had the same process, right?
He's very much, as you said, a young man trapped in amber. And maybe that has to do with his father dying when he was young.
Absolutely.
I don't know what it is. Or maybe it's just the child star syndrome, where someone becomes incredibly successful and famous at a young age. He was in his early 20s and he was an icon. He was at the top of his sport. He was enormously wealthy. He's a child star in some regards. Yeah. Not a teen, but a young man. We certainly have enough cautionary tales about other athletes who developed substance abuse or lost their money, etc. He had gambling, seems to drink quite a bit. He's uber competitive. I mean, there are other worse outcomes in some ways for Michael Jordan that he didn't end up in. We hear about 100%. Antoine Walker, Allen Iverson. There are a lot of great players, Vin Baker, who didn't have the same kind of stability that he still enjoys. And I don't know, maybe we have to stop looking at him and saying, wow, this dude's a dick, because obviously he is, and he's immature, but maybe he ended up okay. It could have been much worse if he didn't have Nike, and he didn't have Gatorade, and he didn't have a lot of money, and he didn't have an industry or the Charlotte Hornets. Like, there are other bad outcomes for this kind of personality.
Well, this goes to our Peter Luger's theory. He was such an extraordinary basketball player on the court, undeniably an apex basketball player, that it saved him. All of his teammates in this documentary are like, would I call him nice? No. Did I win a championship with him? Yes. And we were great. Bill Weddington, B.J. Armstrong, Tony Kukoc, they said those things. And if Jordan didn't have the gift of being such a great basketball player, his life would have been different. And we could say that about everybody. But to your point, like, I hear about...
He's too good to fail.
Yeah, he's too good to fail. I think about Steve Francis quite a bit, because when he came out as the golden child, the franchise, like, it looked like he was going to have a long, happy life, to be honest. And we later found out, like, he's not the happiest dude in the world, and things didn't really pan out for him, and he got hurt, and he walked through the hallowed halls of MSG and relegation, and that set a course of bad things in his life. But, like, I feel sympathy for a lot of these guys whose skills kind of pass through their fingers like sand, and then they're gone forever.
So where is MJ now if he doesn't reclaim his athleticism after that early career injury?
Yeah.
What if he's a run-of-the-mill NBA player and has been out of the league for 20 years?
And he wants us to believe in the documentary. We get another montage of him lifting weights. And he keeps on talking about he was primed for baseball, so the muscles were wrong. That's why he lost that series, because he didn't have the correct shoulder muscles. And for basketball, I'm like, no, you didn't realize the defender was right behind you. And Horace Grant was really good, and you just got beat. It was a coin flip.
So let's talk about that Orlando series, because I find that fascinating. It's a really tricky narrative gymnastic act. Because on one hand, you have to say that prime MJ doesn't lose. That's the story here. He doesn't lose. And yet we have to come up with a reason that he lost.
Yeah.
So the obvious reason here is he lost because he was coming back from playing baseball. He was more tired than any human has ever been tired in a basketball game. He was more out of shape than anyone has ever been out of the shape, despite being someone who wanted it more and outworked everybody.
Well, they said he had conditioned his body to be an outfielder. And they spent so much time showing footage of him, quote unquote, creating like lower body strength. And I'm like, well, what are we doing? And it's like, the reason I lost is because my shoulders weren't strong enough because of baseball.
But that's what I'm saying, right? They had to come up with a reason that
Yeah.
it wasn't his fault. It was because he wasn't in shape, and because he only played 17 games in the regular season, and he only played, 10, 17, whatever it was, in the playoffs. And I think there is validity to that. I don't think he came back in prime basketball shape. That's true. On the other hand, in that series, he averaged 31, 7, 6, 2, and 3.
That's very good.
He was not necessarily as great as he was like the year before or the year prior when he was in the playoffs, but he was fantastic. And he was not the reason they lost that series. There were some crucial plays, but it was not his fault. He was really good, but they have to actually blame it on him without blaming it on him. You can't say, well, Jordan balled, but, Pippen dropped complete turds in 2 games, which he did. And Tony Kukoc played like kind of turdish in a couple games too. You can look at it and be like, MJ may not have been up to his exact usual standards, but he was great. And Scottie Pippen had 2 games where he was horrific, and they lost both those games. It was a pretty close series. It was 6 games, but it was very tight. And you could say he was let down by his teammates. But you can't in this situation, because you can't claim that great MJ lost because his teammates weren't good enough.
Yeah.
So you have to say it was because he had baseball shoulders.
Yeah. I mean, the whole architecture of this specific episode and the whole 8 hours that we've seen so far is interesting. Even in the baseball, I wanted to know about his feelings during the baseball season. And it ended very quickly with people saying he was actually really good, and batting 200 in Double-A was extraordinary, and he would have been a great player if he stuck to it. I'm like, what are we doing? He was terrible. He had no instincts. We saw it. And, we say this all the time about this documentary, but showing us these things is the irony, because you can say all you want, but you have to end up showing us the games or showing us the numbers. And we don't get many stats. We don't get any stats in this whole thing.
So he just laughs at Peyton, and no one says, yeah, but you went 22 of 60 against him, sir.
Yeah.
And watch him react. We don't get any of that. And the same way in the Orlando series. Well, so the story here that you told about you just needed to get back in shape. Okay. But the real talk was from our guy Horace. He's like,
Who's the hero? He's the hero of this series.
He was like, they were soft. Yeah, they went out and got Dennis Rodman, and they came back and they beat us. We didn't have a chance. Once you added Rodman to that team, they kicked the shit out of us. Mm-hmm. So I went and looked at the numbers. You know what? Horace, truth teller, because the Bulls were a great defensive team that season. Not that great on offense. Great defensively, even with Jordan playing 17 games. Their offense was totally fine in that playoff series. Fine.
But their
defense was bad. They couldn't stop Orlando. Specifically, Orlando crushed on the offensive boards, and they couldn't defend Shaq without fouling him. That was it. You look at the difference in a tight series, it was the fact that Shaq went to the foul line a ton. Orlando as a team went like 20 more times, something like that. They scored 30 more points from the free throw line. They shot 210 free throws to Chicago's 163 in a tight series. That was it. Had nothing to do with Michael Jordan. Had nothing to do with scoring. They were not a good rebounding team. They were not a good defensive team against Horace Grant, who was a beast, And Shaquille O'Neal, of course. They added Dennis Rodman. They became a better team. They smashed Orlando. So, like, the narrative of Michael Jordan was too tired? Not really. They just didn't have defensive personnel. But we'll never get that story here. Well, they have to blame it on Michael Jordan.
Yeah. And his supporting information, I feel like he could have done a better job at this, because in these last 2 episodes, we got a lot of LaBradford Smith, a lot of B.J. Armstrong, and a lot of Steve Kerr. And obviously he has Steve Kerr on there for him to say, like, the Bulls were better than the Warriors team. But
you have one job, Steve.
Yeah. It's like, don't be careful bringing up Gary Payton, because the first thing we do, clickety-clack, is like look at the numbers and be like, yo, Gary Payton was really good. And now he moves up the all-time list, and he becomes one of Jordan's enemies, right? And before that, I didn't really think about Gary Payton when I thought of Michael Jordan. But thank you for reminding me. And
now I'm like, yeah, GP, lock his ass up. Put the clamps on him.
Is GP top 20 all-time now? Maybe he just passed Kobe. I don't know. And it's a fascinating documentary because it ceases to be about basketball history, and it starts to become the inner workings of Michael Jordan's ego, which is so fascinating, and I prefer it.
Same, because I look at that series against Orlando and say, okay, let's say MJ is 20% better. Was he going to score 38 a game and not 31? He was really good. He was really good. I think Orlando beats you anyway. You had no answer for Shaq and Horace.
Yeah.
And that's that.
Yeah. I mean
there's a lot of that. There's a lot of that. I think you made a great point. We go back and we look at Gary Payton and say, you're getting shorted here.
Yeah, dude. We don't talk about Gary Payton enough. Thank you for reminding me. He was insanely great. Him and Sean Kemp were beasts, and that even helps Jordan because Jordan beat them. But like, I mean, the interns joke about Jordan moving down the all-time rankings, but it makes you think a little bit, right? Like, his obstacles were players we don't really think about, like B.J. Armstrong on the Hornets, Mark Price, Brad Daugherty. These are the characters. These are the final bosses he's bringing up in his documentary.
Yeah, you brought up B.J. Armstrong in order to shit on him for leaving the team.
Yeah,
that was the point, and to say that you owned him. B.J. Armstrong averaged 3.9 points that game and scored 10 in the one in which he celebrated.
Yeah.
No, that season, 3.9 in the season.
Yep.
In that game that is viewed as a big mistake by B.J. Armstrong, poking the bear. Scored 10 points and hit a big shot and yelled.
Yeah.
Like that. But that's really interesting that MJ still has to, like, hold on, I got to go at BJ here. Let's get the BJ story in there. Everyone's like, who cares, dude? He's like, no. BJ story goes in there. The LaBradford Smith story, that's a good one. Love that one.
Yeah.
Love how I owned that guy.
Yeah. It's like when you hold a grudge against, like, the first person you dated, and now you're an adult and have been through life, and you're still holding a grudge. Your friends would probably be like, what's going on with you, man? Like, do you want to talk about this? And the way Jordan talks about his past has a lot of that in it, where I don't think we're going to get to the bottom of this, but it brings up a lot of truly fascinating stuff, which I hope someone writes a book, after this about another take on it.
The Pippen discussion has been quite interesting because he's been relatively gracious in terms of saying how great Pippen was, that he couldn't win without Pippen, but then he's proceeded to kind of take Pippen apart.
Yeah, he's like, I don't mean to be racist, but, I don't mean to be offensive, but. So in the first episode, he's like, let it be clear, I had never won a championship without Pippen. I'm like, this checks out. And then he roasts him.
Some of my best friends are Pippins.
Yeah.
Like, look, I love Pippins. Like, I'm married to a Pippen.
Yeah.
Look, Scotty said he had a headache. You know how Pippins are, though.
Well, I when you got a headache, you got a headache. What am I supposed to do? You said you got a headache.
Look, we all know Pippins who lie about headaches.
And after leaving after quitting on the Bulls, which was like briefly discussed, but like there was rumors, and he quit, and they're like he was exhausted. I'm like, okay. And then roasting Pippen for not wanting to check into that game because he felt, admittedly, he talked about it. He was like, I felt disrespected. I did.
Pippen was more honest there than Jordan
Yes.
is at any point in this entire documentary about him.
Yeah.
And
totally.
Pippen was so honest. He's like, I'd probably do it again, man.
Yeah.
It was great. It was great.
Yeah. Yeah. That was great. I mean, the winners of last night were Pippen and B.J. Armstrong, who was like,
and of course, Horace Grant.
and Horace Grant, who wins the whole documentary.
Horace is
Grant.
awesome. He is taking this as non-seriously as you should, and
Yeah.
he's kind of grinning because he knows this is like an MJ vanity project.
Yep.
Horace is awesome. He doesn't seem to care at all about the fact that they got rocked.
Yeah.
You know, Jordan wants to see him be like, "Damn, they swept us. It was humiliating." He's like, "We didn't have a chance, man. They got Rodman. What are you gonna do? You know, they were soft. They were a pussy ass team. We kicked their ass. They got Dennis, Hall of Famer, great player, incredible dude. We had nothing for Dennis Rodman."
How would you write an entire book if I was the only snitch? I'm like, that's right. I mean,
Horace is a true king.
the comedy is Horace Grant with his like amazing lisp and his big smile, and I love Tony Kukoc just being devastated. He's like, I don't know what happened. I'm just trying to be nice. What? It's so funny. Every time Tony Kukoc pops up, I'm like, oh man, he's so lovable.
Mildly bewildered Eastern European.
Yeah, it's like I
Sort of
thought we
emotional.
were friends. Weren't we teammates? I don't understand. Why is Phil Jackson yelling at me? What's happening?
I thought the Pippen part, which was fairly elongated, considering things. There was LeBradford Smith content to get to, and they still lingered on Pippen. And we're talking about that final play against the Knicks in, was it Game 3 of the playoff series in which Jordan was in Birmingham playing for the Barons. And the Bulls were very good that season. They were even better than their record. They lost some close games, but they were a very good team. Mm-hmm. And I mean, they really didn't slip very much. It was a really good team. Mm-hmm. Pippen was an MVP candidate. Mm-hmm. And there was a late game play where Phil Jackson called a play where the ball would go to Tony Kukoc for a potentially game-winning shot. Scottie Pippen did not like that and sat out. This would be kind of unthinkable today that a player would do that. In retrospect, though, like, are you kidding? Like, why would you not give the ball to Scottie Pippen? He's been in Jordan's shadow for all these years. He's an MVP candidate. Phil Jackson would have never called a play that didn't go to Michael Jordan. And that's why Jordan wanted to bring this up. That's why he lingered on this story, because it showed that even when Pippen was an MVP candidate, Phil Jackson didn't believe in him the way he believed in MJ. That he was a sidekick through and through, a second banana. That's why Jordan wanted to tell this story so bad. And that's why he said, yeah, that's really going to be a blemish on Pippen's legacy in his life for as long as he lives. That he sat down on a play when he didn't get the ball. Jordan doesn't give a fuck about Scottie sitting. He wants us to remember that Pippen didn't get the ball.
And that footage of Jordan watching that go down in the locker room, I'm sure he was like, "Oh, I look amazing. I said good things," but you see him and that smile. I'm like, "You're loving every second of this.
You
like
do
you
not
should,
see
whatever."
Jordan express purer joy
Yeah.
at any of his championships, at any moment, than the ear-to-ear beaming grin that is plastered across his mug
Yeah.
after the Bulls lose to the Knicks without him. Like, he is aglow.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's remarkable. I'm like, there it is. That's MJ alive.
Yeah. He's like, usually I don't like to be filmed during this, but I'm not part of the team anymore. I'm like, he's like, where are the cameras? Where are the cameras? Get this.
But no, remember, he wanted to watch the game by himself, right?
Yeah, yeah. So he's just like, oh, this is weird that you caught me.
But
And
also weird that, like, why wouldn't you watch it with his teammates? You'd assume everyone would want to watch the game together. Because Jordan didn't want people to see his reactions. He wanted to be free to like fuck.
Yeah.
Like Pippen dunked. God damn it.
Yeah, yeah. And we
Ewing with a 2. All right.
Yeah. You never want to leave a job and have like the person who replaces you do a better job. Like that's natural. But like Jordan
he was so transparently jubilant. He was ecstatic that they had lost to the Knicks of all people. A relegated franchise.
Yeah, not even in the NBA.
And yet, without him.
I mean, it has become something that is so interesting in a way, but then, like, I don't know if, like, sad is the right word, but, like, I don't know how to view Jordan. I definitely feel an empathy, that damn word. I definitely feel...
Are you an empath?
Check this out. Jordan is an egomaniac.
Apex Kuo, the empath.
No, but like this is kind of the most extreme version of Jordan that I was expecting, because when he was talking about this documentary before it came out, he said, "You're not going to like me." And what he meant was he's too much of a competitor and maybe he's not everyone's best friend. And I'm like, "Oh, I like you more because I can sympathize with the difficulties of being a nice person, a grown man, a mature human being." Because I think everyone can struggle with that. And it makes him human, and that's what makes a documentary good, right? And he's not telling us these things. We're just seeing it, which is great because I don't like narration in movies either.
What's interesting is that some people's response to this is, well, we don't need to analyze it too much. It's just meant to be fun. It's not what it's intended to be at all.
Yeah.
It's not intended to be fun in the least. It's intended to be Jordan's manifesto. Him staking a claim to being the GOAT. That's what this is intended for. It's not just cotton candy basketball stuff. It has a completely directed audience, a total narrative arc. It's not some junk food basketball stuff like a YouTube highlight reel of the top 20 jams of Vince Carter's career. That's not what this is at all. Like, that idea just misses the entire point. This should be analyzed. Mm-hmm. We should be looking at what's omitted and wondering why. Mm-hmm. Because everything is calibrated along one direction. It's not just a bunch of highlights thrown together. So, with that in mind, what's interesting to me is how unfun basketball itself is presented as.
Yeah, totally.
This could be about a lawyer.
Yeah.
So I was at Ben Benson's steakhouse, having some cream spinach. The defense attorney walks by, blows me off. This fucking guy, man. So when I go into the courtroom the next day, I destroy him. No one has seen someone air out a witness on cross like I did.
Yeah.
That's all it is. That's all it is. There's nothing even about basketball. There's no beauty. There's no nothing.
We got a little bit about the triangle, and like they ran it to perfection without Jordan, and then that's it. So it's like there's no why with that. They don't tell us what the triangle is. They just say the triangle. It's almost as if we're going in being like, well, Jordan's the GOAT, so this is a sizzle reel, right? Like we've already established that.
Even when they show basketball, MJ is the person that slow-mo was invented for. We don't get the grace of his game. We don't get the explosiveness, the athleticism. All we get is him falling to the ground and showing how tough he was because it's supposed to prove that LeBron couldn't have done it. That's why everything is about physicality and the toughness of the 90s and like everybody just fighting and pushing and fouling and punching to show that it was a tougher era than the current one. That's all it is. He doesn't even care about the things in basketball that make him great. It's incredible. Like, he doesn't even seem to like basketball. You could just remove basketball from it and talk about it as if he was, opening up an ice cream stand and taking out his rivals to become a dominant ice cream salesman in the greater tri-state.
I mean, I agree. Our criticisms of the 2 episodes before this was they assume that we love Michael Jordan, which we do, but they also forget that we love basketball. And we're here to celebrate this thing. And I remember when this first started, I was clearly mistaken. I thought this documentary was going to be about Michael Jordan. And you told me it was about the whole team. And I was like, oh, that changes everything.
Yeah. I retract that.
No, but you're right. That's what it was presented as. I Googled it right after and be like, oh, yeah, this is about the whole team. So, like, we're going to get to Tony Kukoc episode, you know? And that's what I'm missing. And when he talks about the stars coming to visit him on set at Space Jam, and I forget who says it, maybe it's Reggie Miller, was like, this is the best basketball I've ever been a part of. But we don't see any of it. We don't get any, okay, why? Show us, because I think a game with referees in the finals is more interesting than a bunch of stars shooting jumpers and talking shit. Like, do I care about someone being like, you know, fuck your game? Like this Larry Bird trash talking that I just don't care about anymore. Is that what made it great? Like, can you talk about any of this? Sort of like the dream team practices. We don't get any of this because as basketball fans, aren't you curious about why this was such a unique thing that happened?
There's that. There's the dream team. There's the seeming reluctance to flesh out his opponents.
Yeah.
It just, as I said, it's so devoid of actual basketball. Like, when you look back and they show clips from, like, Phoenix, they kind of talked about one game where Jordan, like, refused to let them lose, and they showed a couple of highlights, but they didn't show anything.
I know.
There's actually very little basketball.
Dude, I don't know why we got that LaBradford Smith story and we got no Starks, Ewing, New York City. We barely got Kobe Bryant. Like, it's the Kobe episode. I got my tissues ready. This is going to be heartbreaking. And it was like, Kobe was like, Jordan was the best. And that's it. I don't think we're going to get any more Kobe. We only have 2 hours left, and it's going to be like a crescendo, right?
Well, look, this is as they say, man, basketball is jazz. You know, you got to listen to the anecdotes that Michael Jordan isn't telling, man.
It's some Bob Cousy ass shit.
Ooh, I'm bopping to the LaBradford Smith story. Ooh, Horace Grant with a game-winning block. You don't hear it, right?
And then the punchline of the LaBradford Smith story was like, oh, actually, he didn't say that. I just motivated myself. I'm like, this is the worst story ever. Like, this story sucks. It's like, yeah, I made it all up.
So we go into the finals. You know me, I don't care about winning. Don't care about winning at all. Might as well lose. But then George Karl snubbed me, and then I wanted to win. So wait. Run it back. Do you have an insatiable, unquenchable lust for winning and victory? Or do you need someone to snub you in order for you to actually want to win? Because how do those things coexist? Well, I want to win so bad that I make up snubs in order for me to win. Nah, man, that doesn't sound like you really want to win. That sounds like you want vengeance, you want retribution. I'm here for winners, just pure winning. I don't need to self-motivate with fake quotes from LaBradford Smith. No, I just want to win for the purity of victory. Because I'm a winner.
Do you think the overall tone about Michael Jordan has changed? Like, I'm not getting as much like Jordan's the GOAT in my feed, and I may have just blocked it.
That's because he's down to number 7.
He's in danger of falling out of the top 10, man.
I did not know that Horace would pass him, but here we are.
GP, the glove, and Horace. Maybe Sean Kemp on his heels, man. BJ Armstrong's shooting up the rankings, man.
Kemp was awesome in that series.
Kemp was a beast. He was a filthy basketball player who I think is not even talked about enough, even though he's the Rain Man. That dude captured the imaginations of every kid.
I did love the legalized hemp sign along with everyone else. That was pretty good. Or legalized Kemp, sorry.
Yeah, that was great. I mean, the things that go viral or start trending during this documentary are really fun. And we're getting more jokes and less. And that's what I was thinking about, like Twitter, the way Twitter polices itself. Like, I had this thought the other day, like, Twitter is just a place where you shoot your shot, being like, I think spaghetti is bad. And you see if people like, yeah, I do think spaghetti is bad. Until someone's like, nah, you're wrong. And then you throw up memes, and then you get, your take gets shot down. Or you're like Michael Jordan versus Orlando. You don't quite make it there with your take. But I think the internet is behaving the way I thought it would at hour 8. Just being like, we get it. Are there any jokes out there? I'm like, yes, there is. Legalize hemp. Okay.
Yeah, and again, we have discussed this documentary after understanding its true nature as a document. It's a propaganda tool, obviously. And is it effective? And I don't know. I think it has certainly diminished his opponents. It has diminished the majesty of his game. And I don't think if you are too young to remember him playing, you're going to come away with thinking that Michael Jordan was great other than he wanted it. He was great. He was a competitor. He was all those messages are intact because that's all there is. But I don't think you really understand what made him so good, because Jordan himself doesn't seem interested in telling you that he could literally fucking fly. Yeah, that doesn't seem to be part of the message at all, that he was a better athlete than anyone.
And he's campaigning, and I think the rules of campaigning apply here, where there's roughly a 30% base of people who think Jordan's the GOAT, no questions asked, don't at me, and us who are like, everything's very complicated, and evolution is complicated, and we can't really compare things, therefore LeBron James is unfuckwithable. And then there's everyone in between. Let's say it's a rough 40%. And if you've ever been a fan of Nike or those amazing shoes that Jordan has put out, I think everyone's been in the proxy of his products and his logo, and you get to see him, you're like, incredible. I've never actually seen him play. This guy is amazing. And then you vote for Jordan. But then other people might be like, wait, who's BJ Armstrong? Is he good? It's like, no, he's not good. It's like, who's LeBradford Smith? Is he good? I'm like, no. And it's like, well, what makes him so great? I'm like, that's the question.
And hey, we are not necessarily the target audience because we are already Jordan skeptics. So when we say, I'm not convinced, so what? He's not trying to convince us. He's telling the same story he's always told, that he is the best, that he is the greatest, that he wants it more, that he won 6 finals and didn't lose in the finals. And he's just telling the same story again with the same co-conspirators and to a new audience who may not remember him. He's just playing the hits. He's giving a new generation the exact same material and throwing red meat to the people who already believe in it. He's not trying to win us over. So maybe it is effective. Maybe if you are 25 years old, far too young to remember him in any context other than as a sneaker salesman and a crying-faced meme, maybe you're like, this guy's great. Everybody says he's great. It's on TV. It's 10 hours. Everyone says he's great. Yeah. I don't need to be convinced more. Here it is.
Yeah. And
maybe it works.
I don't need to convince those people because joy is joy. And like, they don't, like, we love basketball so much that we talk about it every day or every week, or depending how many self-care days we have in between. And I understand when someone's like, he's incredible. I'm like, well, it's complicated. It's like, yeah, I don't care. I'm like, yes, this is an amazing thing that we get to watch, you know?
Like, exactly. And the only thing that does irk me a bit is when people are like, ha ha ha, he's laughing at Gary Payton owned.
No.
I'm like, well, no, because not only was Gary Payton right, and not only did Gary Payton do a great job, but they're being dishonest by not presenting that.
Yeah.
And they're letting Jordan laugh at someone and then walk away. And it's just not journalism. It's not a good documentary. It's just bullshit.
I thought they did Gary Payton and Isaiah Thomas so dirty by filming Jordan looking at the take on an iPad. That's just like, that's scoundrelly shit. What is that? Our buddy Nikki said it was dry snitching. You know, it's just like, don't do that to these wonderful basketball players, man. It's like, are we going to get a follow-up question? It's like, well, Jordan laughed at you. And Gary Payton's like, oh, really? Like, could we get that? No, it just ends. Jordan laughing is the end of story. It's like, well, he's the GOAT.
Michael Jordan is on vacation.
It's not even his house. It was revealed that all these were sets because Jordan doesn't want us to see his house. This dude is very fragile. Like, you couldn't move stuff out of a corner of your house. I know you don't want...
I think the word wife got mentioned at one point, right? Maybe.
And I respect him not mentioning his mom, his family, his sons. Oh, I mean, his sons are in there, but this is a really big part of Jordan's life that we don't get told about. Fair. Okay, whatever. If he doesn't want to talk about his divorce, if he doesn't want to talk about his family life, if he doesn't want to talk about the murder and just mention it, that's okay. But it has to be compelling in a basketball way too.
And I think it's become compelling in a way that he did not intend, and I'm enjoying it a lot.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. If it wasn't the Rona, we should have had a party for it. It would have been fun to watch it with other people.
I love cookies.
Could have the cookies story.
I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies.